Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rivera. In the next set of videos, I'm going to talk about Chapter 3, Sensation and Perception. In this set of videos, I'm going to talk about psychophysics. I'm going to focus a lot on vision and hearing, but I will touch on a few of the other senses, and I will make a big distinction between what is sensation and what is perception. Um, Now, first, I want to talk a little bit about uh, how we measure um, your senses, what that means, and what we consider the absolute threshold. Now, an absolute threshold is the minimum that a person can sense a specific stimulus in the environment uh, about half the time. So, what is the minimum that can be present so that you can sense it with your body, some part of your body, at least half of the time? Now, what is important about the absolute threshold, or a good way to think about it, is that it's different between humans and other animals. That is, uh, the the ability of a cat, for example, to hear something in the environment is different than that of humans. Now, there's a lot of differences for this. Some of them have to do with the organs, some of them have to do with the ears, the outer ears. You might see that a cat has the ability to move their ears independently of the other one so that they can not only uh, hear, but that they can sense where that sound is coming from. And because of that, their threshold is going to be a lot lower. They're going to be able to hear things that we cannot hear. Um, the same thing is true with vision. A lot of other animals, their absolute threshold tends to be lower than ours. That is, they can see a lot more with a lot less light. Uh, for cats or animals like cats, that's going to include uh, the ability to see in very dark environments because of their uh, tabetum lucidum, that is a layer behind their retina, which actually reflects light back to the cones. The rods in the cones, so that even in very dark light, the cat has the ability to basically get not only the chance to see with very little light, but then uh, that light is reflected back out, and the cones and the rods get a second chance at uh, sensing the light. Now, to us, if you're just looking at a cat in the middle of the night, it looks like their eyes are glowing because, in fact, that light is being reflected forward. Many animals have this ability, but not humans, obviously. Now, some animals just develop enormous eyes. This is a tertiary, I believe is the name of that uh, animal, and its eyes are actually about the size of its brain. Each eye is about the size of its brain. And so, because they're so much bigger, they can actually let in more light, control how much light is being let in, let's say in darkness, and they can then see a lot better in the dark. Toads do something really weird. What toads do is actually control how fast their nerves send information to the brain. They actually slow it down so that each uh, rod and cone only sends light about every 4 seconds. This allows each rod and cone to sort of be stimulated even in very little light. But it does mean that then they lag behind. This is why sometimes a toad sees you and it gets scared and it jumps in front of your feet because it, basically it's lagging behind, is always about 4 seconds behind what is actually happening in front of them. Uh, Now, when we're talking about predators, that is a problem, but this presents a benefit for them when they're trying to eat at night because they can actually see a lot better. Now, for humans, you might see on the left-hand side that a human can see a candle, one candle, from about 30 miles away on a clear, dark night. Now, imagine if you were in Kissimmee and there weren't any buildings around and everything was flat in a very dark, clear night. Someone standing in Orlando uh, could hold one candle, and the average person, someone with good eyesight, would be able to see that candle flicker about half the time. Um, and So that's actually incredibly good. Now, obviously, that doesn't take into account people who might need glasses and things like that. But someone with normal vision would be able to see a candle flicker about 30 miles away. That's incredibly good. Our hearing is not too bad either. The average person can hear the ticking of a watch from about 20 feet away in a quiet room. Again, about half the time. This is the absolute threshold. Our smell is pretty good. In fact, it's not as great as, say, dogs, but it's actually pretty good. Um, uh, the average human can smell one drop of perfume diffused within 3 separate rooms. Taste, the average person can taste the sweetness of 1 teaspoon of sugar dissolved in about 2 gallons of water. And finally, for touch, the wing of a bumblebee being dropped on their skin, on their cheek, from about the distance of 1 centimeter. So, um, again, these is what we sometimes call psychophysics. This is when we're trying to measure to what degree humans can sense the environment in front of them. You'll notice there that we also talk about the just noticeable difference. How many more candles, right? Let's say we're doing that, that experiment 30 miles away. How many more candles need to be added for you to be able to see the difference? Not just say, oh, yeah, I see the candle, but say, oh, yeah, that candle looks brighter now. And it's not a one-to-one ratio. Usually you have to shift that quite dramatically for the change to occur. Now, I want to talk about 2 other concepts that you're going to read about just sort of briefly. The first one is what we call subliminal perception. And subliminal perception is real. There are things that we can do that you yourself consciously are not aware of, but the rest of your brain will be aware of. So, um, the classic one is, you're watching a movie or a show, and there's like a little flash of light or there's like a blink, and you don't notice what the blink was. You might not even notice that the blink occurred. But in that movie or show, it was spliced to add an extra frame. And that extra frame says something, maybe implies that you're thirsty or something along those lines. And because you don't see it, you don't think about it. But the truth is that the rest of your brain saw it. Your frontal lobe was not aware of it, but the rest of your brain is aware of it. And so that subconscious awareness gets your brain to sort of think about this and trigger different behaviors. For example, you might become thirsty. Now, what you're seeing there is a little GIF, a sillier one, where an extra little slide is placed in there. Now, obviously, this slide is a lot slower and you can see it, you're aware of it. But if it went fast enough, then you wouldn't be aware of it uh, uh, consciously, but unconsciously, it might still affect you. Now, sometimes this is done in movies and posters and advertisement, not necessarily always on purpose. Sometimes it happens without it being purposeful, but it still affects you. What you're seeing here is a poster, and uh, on the right-hand side, someone has outlined what is the figure of a woman, what seems to be a naked figure of a woman. Now, it's not for sure that whoever drew this poster did it on purpose, but what is implied here, at least, is that in order to grab your attention, they put a subliminal message here so that your eyes would linger a little bit longer on the image so that it would pull you to pay attention. And maybe it might even trigger some emotional reaction, maybe a level of excitement. And then you would confuse your excitement, which subliminally might be a sexual type of excitement, to confuse that with a general excitement, like, oh, I'm excited to see this movie. And so that might be a way that that advertisers use subliminal messaging, um, kind of to get your attention without telling you, uh, here I'm going to put this naked woman on the pictures that you uh, stare longer. Some commercials, some movies do that on purpose and they just do it blatantly, but sometimes it's kind of just hidden in the background, and so you don't realize it consciously, but unconsciously you're still affected. Now, that is very different than what sometimes is called extrasensory perception. Extrasensory perception is not real, or said another way, there is no scientific evidence to suggest that extrasensory perception is real. So, extrasensory perception are going to be things like being psychic. Some people claim that they have an extra sense that lets them see the future, or lets them read people's minds, or lets them see, I don't know, their aura or something. Regardless of how much science has been put into this, right? People want to know if this is true, but consistently the answer is no. There is no evidence to suggest that this is real.